died thinking I was a total idiot for wanting to be an actor.
Really?
Yeah. He said, you got a snowball's chance in hell of having a fucking career in that town. I never thought about it as trying to have a need to prove something to him.
In an industry built on fake smiles and polished PR, Sam Elliott has always been the real deal. Gritty, blunt, and utterly unfiltered. With that gravelly voice and old-school cowboy code, he's never been afraid to call things as he sees them. But one actor, in particular, pushed him further than anyone else ever had. Who was it? And what made Elliott's patience finally run dry? Let's saddle up and find out. The actor who got under Sam's skin. For decades, Sam Elliott built a reputation as the Hollywood cowboy who spoke softly, carried a big presence, and meant every word. So when that same voice growled its way through an interview in early 2022, calling The Power of the Dog a piece of cirque, people nearly fell off their saddles. Elliott had just fired a verbal shot at one of the most acclaimed films of the year, and its lead, Benedict Cumberbatch. It wasn't a random outburst. The film, directed by Jane Campion, told the story of a repressed, complex cowboy, and Elliott hated every frame of it. On Marc Maron's WTF podcast, he tore into the movie's depiction of the American West, calling it not what those damn cowboys looked like. He mocked its chaps-wearing guys running around with no shirts on, and said it felt more like something made in Hollywood, Montana, than the real frontier. He didn't name Cumberbatch directly, but the disdain was clear. For Elliott, a man who practically bleeds authenticity, it wasn't just about a movie, it was about what the West represents. He spent a lifetime portraying cowboys not as romantic caricatures, but as real, dirt-under-the-nails men. So seeing a British actor playing an emotionally tormented rancher, filmed in New Zealand under the lens of a female director, rubbed him entirely the wrong way. Benedict Cumberbatch, for his part, stayed composed. He later said he found Elliott's comments very odd, adding that the film explored toxic masculinity, not traditional cowboy mythology. To him, the movie wasn't insulting the West. It was dissecting its emotional walls. Critics mostly sided with Cumberbatch and Campion, praising the film's nuance. Elliott, however, was unmoved. For a man who came of age watching John Wayne and Gary Cooper, the new version of the cowboy felt foreign, even disrespectful. But beneath the gruffness, there was more going on. Elliott's reaction was as much about principle as preference. He's one of the few actors left who still treats Westerns like sacred ground, a reflection of American grit and moral code. In his eyes, that world deserves respect, not reinterpretation. When others saw art, he saw erosion. The backlash came fast. Social media lit up with criticism. Some called Elliott's remarks outdated, even homophobic, though he never mentioned sexuality directly. A few fans defended him, saying he was simply standing up for authenticity in an age when movies distort everything for shock value. But for the first time in years, Elliott was at the center of controversy, not for his acting, but for his honesty. Eventually, he issued an apology. At a panel for 1883, the Yellowstone prequel in which he starred, Elliott admitted his words were hurtful. He said he respected Jane Campion and had no right to say what I said. It was rare humility from a man known for blunt edges. But even then, some fans wondered if he truly changed his mind, or simply realized how big the storm had become. What the incident revealed, though, was pure Sam Elliott. He's a man anchored in another era, one where cowboys meant integrity, not irony. To him, Benedict Cumberbatch wasn't the problem personally. He represented a Hollywood culture that Elliott feels no longer values truth, toughness, or restraint. His anger wasn't really about an actor at all. It was about the world losing something he holds dear. This moment also showed the growing divide between old-school actors and modern filmmaking. For Elliot, cinema isn't therapy or symbolism. It's storytelling about people who lived and died by simple, honest rules. For today's directors, it's a playground for re-examining identity and emotion. Neither side is wrong, but the clash between them made headlines because it exposed the soul of two very different artistic worlds. When the dust settled, Elliot carried on quietly, as he always does. He returned to his ranch-style life, spoke sparingly in interviews, and focused on 1883, which, ironically, revisited the kind of realism he accused the power of the dog of lacking. For fans, the controversy faded into another example of what makes Sam Elliott, Sam Elliott, stubborn, sincere, and unwilling to filter himself for anyone. It's easy to laugh off his comments as old man grumbling, but there's something refreshing about a Hollywood veteran who refuses to play the polite game. Elliot might not always be right, but he's always real, and in an industry addicted to pretense, that alone is worth something. But Elliot's sharp tongue didn't stop with the power of the dog. From blockbuster westerns to hit TV dramas, he's taken aim at more than one Hollywood sacred cow, and his next target hit even closer to home. Creative conflicts and unfiltered opinions. If there's one thing Sam Elliott never learned, it's how to sugarcoat. After the power of the dog storm, many assumed he'd stay quiet for a while. But Elliott's never been one to bite his tongue, not for critics, not for studios, and certainly not for Hollywood's idea of what sells. And his next big clash came with a franchise that millions of fans adored: Yellowstone. The irony? Yellowstone and its prequel 1883 should have been Elliott's natural home turf. Cowboys, frontier hardship, raw American landscapes. It was the kind of material he'd spent his whole career honoring. But when interviewers asked him about the show that launched a global obsession, Elliot didn't hold back. "I'm not a Yellowstone fan," he said flatly. "Too much like effing Dallas for me." It was the most Sam Elliott thing to say, brutally honest and completely unfiltered. He wasn't criticizing 1883, which he starred in and praised for its grit and realism. His issue was with the parent show, which he saw as glitzy soap opera Hollywood masquerading as the Wild West. In other words, it lacked the soul that true westerns were built on. Elliot wasn't attacking Kevin Costner or creator Taylor Sheridan personally. In fact, he admired Sheridan's writing and direction. What he disliked was the tone, the flashy cars, family feuds, and modern melodrama that turned ranch life into prime-time spectacle. To Elliot, the West wasn't about boardroom brawls or romantic betrayals. It was about dust, blood, sweat, and moral code. And Yellowstone, in his eyes, missed that mark completely. Fans of the series didn't take kindly to his comments. Many flooded social media to defend the show, arguing that Yellowstone had revived the Western for a new generation. But others saw his point. Elliot was speaking from a place of authenticity, a man who'd spent 50 years in the saddle, literally and figuratively. His critique wasn't jealousy or arrogance. It was a defense of storytelling he believed in. Throughout his career, Elliot has called out Hollywood's habit of romanticizing or sensationalizing what doesn't need embellishment. "You don't need to dress up the West," he once said. "It's already dramatic enough." That philosophy has guided every role he's taken, from Tombstone to The Big Lebowski, and every role he's turned down. He doesn't do flashy, he doesn't do fake, and he's not afraid to walk away from scripts that do. This no-nonsense attitude hasn't always made him popular with studios. There are stories from the sets of older films where Elliot clashed with producers who wanted a cleaner movie star image. But Elliot always pushed back, insisting that characters should look real, not airbrushed. He believed that honesty in storytelling mattered more than glamour or fame. That's also why he's never been the kind of actor to jump from blockbuster to blockbuster. While others chased franchises and action roles, Elliot stayed grounded in smaller projects that meant something to him. Whether it was Lifeguard in the 70s, The Hero in 2017, or A Star is Born in 2018, his choices have always reflected depth, not ego. He's a man more interested in substance than spotlight. Even his fellow actors have admitted that working with Elliot can be intimidating, not because he's rude or difficult, but because he expects sincerity. He's the kind of performer who shows up fully present, fully prepared, and fully serious. As one co-star once said, "You don't fake it around Sam." He'll see right through you. Elliot's outspoken nature has, at times, clashed with Hollywood's obsession with political correctness. He doesn't thrive in an environment where everyone's walking on eggshells. But even when his words stir up controversy, there's no denying that they come from a place of conviction. He's not chasing attention. He's defending what he believes is right. The Yellowstone comments reinforced something fans already knew. Sam Elliott isn't acting when he talks like a cowboy. He is one, in spirit, if not in saddle. His words may sting, but they're honest. And honesty, for Elliot, is the highest form of respect. Whether you agree with him or not, there's something refreshing about that kind of bluntness. In a business where everyone's trying to be liked, Elliot's never cared about being liked, just about being true. It's that raw authenticity that's kept him relevant, even as the industry around him changes faster than a desert wind. More sharp words to Cage and others. In a business full of polished PR talk, Elliot's honesty stands out like a cowboy in a crowd of city slickers. And over the years, a few actors have found themselves on the wrong end of his famously blunt tongue. Ashton Kutcher, Nicolas Cage, and even his The Big Lebowski co-star, Jeff Bridges. Let's start with Ashton Kutcher, a name that couldn't be further from Elliot's cinematic universe. Kutcher is a product of a different Hollywood, social media savvy, youth-driven, and brand-focused. Elliot, on the other hand, is old school to his core. Their paths crossed in 2003's The Butterfly Effect, a dark sci-fi film where Elliot reportedly had little patience for Kutcher's approach to acting. At the time, Kutcher was best known for That 70s Show and Punk'd, not for brooding dramatic performances. Elliot, who'd spent decades building a reputation as a serious craftsman, was unimpressed by what he saw as Kutcher's Hollywood playboy attitude. In one interview years later, Elliot hinted that he struggled to connect with younger actors who treat the job like a stepping stone instead of a calling. He never mentioned Kutcher by name, but fans and insiders knew exactly who he meant. That quiet jab wasn't about ego, it was about work ethic. Elliot comes from the show up, shut up, and deliver school of acting. He doesn't care about fame, Twitter followers, or personal branding, and he's made that clear. Kutcher represented everything he thought was wrong with the new generation. Too loud, too casual, too self-aware. To Elliot, acting was sacred work, and Kutcher's style was too commercial to take seriously. Then there's Nicolas Cage, a man who, like Elliot, built a name on being unforgettable, but in an entirely different way. Where Elliot is stoic and controlled, Cage is chaos wrapped in charisma. The two never worked together. But Elliot once referenced Cage in a 2005 radio interview when asked about over-the-top acting styles. "Some people confuse intensity with truth," Elliot said. "You can shout and twitch all you want, but that doesn't make it real." It wasn't a direct insult, but it might as well have been. Cage, famous for his unrestrained performances in films like Face Off and Vampire's Kiss, embodies the kind of acting Elliot avoids. Elliot believes in understatement, in saying more with silence than with noise. In that same conversation, he added that real emotion doesn't need to scream to be heard. It's a philosophy that defines his career and draws a clear line between his minimalist craft and Cage's wild unpredictability. Still, there's a hint of respect in that contrast. Elliot has acknowledged that he admires actors who commit fully, even if he doesn't share their method. The difference is that Cage's choices, however eccentric, are born from experimentation, something Elliot has little patience for. For him, an actor's job is to serve the story, not himself. The most surprising of Elliot's critiques, however, came when he spoke about Jeff Bridges, a man who, on paper, seems like his kindred spirit. Both actors share the same rugged energy, the same love for the American West, and they even co-starred in the Coen brothers' The Big Lebowski, 1998. In fact, Elliot's deep-voiced stranger served as the film's narrator, the cowboy who frames Bridges' slacker hero, the Dude. But behind the scenes, the two reportedly had very different approaches. Bridges is famously loose and improvisational, while Elliot is controlled and precise. In interviews years later, Elliot hinted that their differences created quiet tension on set. "Jeff's got his way," Elliot said in a 2017 interview. "It works for him. I just don't do it that way." That's Elliot in a nutshell, respectful but firm. He doesn't need to attack anyone outright. His tone does the heavy lifting. To him, acting is about discipline, not drifting. Bridges' laid-back method clashed with his structured one, though the two men ultimately respected each other deeply. It's a classic case of cowboy grit versus free-spirit cool. In the end, these three, Kutcher, Cage, and Bridges, represent the spectrum of what Elliot resists in Hollywood. Kutcher's showbiz polish, Cage's theatrical chaos, and Bridges' loose spontaneity all brush against Elliot's code, authenticity through restraint. To him, the camera should catch truth, not performance. It's that conviction that makes Elliot both admired and misunderstood. Some see him as a grumpy traditionalist, others as a rare voice of integrity in a business that's lost its grounding. Either way, he says what he thinks. And in an industry addicted to politeness, that makes him stand out. So where does that grit come from? That fierce devotion to truth and realism that few actors today still live by. To understand Sam to Elliot's fire, you've got to go back to where it all started. A cowboy by code, the man behind the mustache. Before Hollywood molded him into the image of the American cowboy, Sam Elliott was just a tall, quiet kid from Sacramento who knew what hard work felt like. Born in 1944, he grew up far from the glamour of movie sets. His father worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, a serious, disciplined man who didn't exactly encourage dreams of acting. When Elliot told him he wanted to perform, his father shot back, "You've got a snowball's chance in hell." That comment stayed with him forever. But instead of killing his dream, it fueled him. Elliot studied acting at the University of Oregon, though he dropped out before graduating. He wasn't the type to sit in classrooms long. He wanted to do, not just learn. He worked construction, picked up odd jobs, and eventually moved to Los Angeles, chasing a career that seemed almost impossible for a man with no connections, and a drawl too slow for the stage. Hollywood in the late 60s wasn't kind to men like him. The era belonged to fast-talking city types and shaggy-haired rebels, not stoic cowboys. But Elliot didn't bend. He stayed true to his tone, his manner, and his roots. And slowly, it worked. His early roles were small, a card player here, a deputy there. But casting directors noticed the authenticity. He didn't play cowboys, he was one. Elliot's early life also explains why he's so allergic to Hollywood pretense. He grew up watching his father leave before dawn, work hard, and never complain. That became Elliot's code. Don't fake, don't flinch, and don't chase what isn't real. Those lessons bled into every character he played, from the soft-spoken mentor in The Hero to the worn-out rancher in A Star Is Born. When Elliot plays a man of few words, it's not an act, it's muscle memory. People who know him say he carries an invisible discipline into every room. He doesn't gossip, doesn't waste time, and doesn't tolerate ego. That's why he's both respected and feared on set. Sam walks in, and everyone straightens up, one director once said. He doesn't say much, but you feel his standards. That quiet intensity traces back to loss. When Elliot was 18, his father died suddenly of a heart attack. It crushed him and hardened him. In interviews, he's admitted that he spent years working to prove his dad wrong. Every role, every ounce of effort was his way of saying, "I made it." But instead of bitterness, that memory became fuel for his code of honor, the same one that shapes his bluntness today. Unlike many actors who drift with trends, Elliot built a career around principle. He picks roles that mean something. He refuses to play parts that cheapen what he believes the American West stands for. That's why his filmography feels so consistent. Everything he does carries that same heartbeat of integrity. And when he speaks up, even harshly, about modern Hollywood, it's not arrogance, it's disappointment. Elliot belongs to a generation that equates craftsmanship with self-respect. For him, acting is work, sacred work, and he treats it that way. That's why he demands the same from everyone around him. You won't find Sam Elliott tweeting or chasing headlines. He prefers horses to hashtags, open air to red carpets. That simplicity, combined with his stubbornness, is what sets him apart from the noise of today's entertainment culture. He's a man built for dust, not flashbulbs. But how did that quiet discipline turn into fame and eventually make him one of the most recognizable faces and voices in Hollywood? The next part follows the long, winding trail that made Sam Elliott a legend. From bit parts to big legacy. Sam Elliott didn't explode into fame overnight. His rise was slow, deliberate, and defined by grit rather than glamour. In the beginning, he was the guy you noticed in the background, the voice that made you turn your head, the face that looked like it belonged in a Western painting. His first real break came with small roles in shows like Gunsmoke and films like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, 1969. He didn't have many lines, but when he did speak, people listened. It took years of persistence before he got a part that truly fit him. Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with his quiet strength. He wasn't the loud hero or the romantic lead. He was something subtler, the kind of man who could silence a room without saying a word. That's rare currency in an industry built on noise. Then came Lifeguard in 1976, a small film that became a cult hit. Elliot played Rick, a man facing middle age, and wondering whether his easy, sun-soaked life had real meaning. It wasn't a Western, but it showed what Elliot could do: give quiet emotion a rugged edge. Critics took notice. He had charisma, but not the glossy, camera-ready kind. His was earned through understatement. From there, Elliot built a filmography that's uniquely his own. Mask 1985 proved he could handle tender, emotional material. Roadhouse 1989 turned him into a cult favorite. Then came Tombstone, 1993, where he played Virgil Earp alongside Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. His calm authority and steel gaze anchored the movie. To this day, fans still quote his lines, calling his performance one of the most authentic portrayals of an Old West lawman ever put on screen. And then there was The Big Lebowski, 1998. Elliot appeared for only a few minutes, playing the stranger, a mysterious, mustached cowboy narrator. Yet his deep, honeyed drawl and dry humor left a permanent mark. It's one of those roles where the movie would still be good without him, but unforgettable with him. That scene cemented him as not just an actor, but a symbol. The mustache, the voice, the presence, all became legend. Elliott's later career only strengthened that status. In The Hero, 2017, he played an aging actor confronting mortality and regret, a role so personal it felt like autobiography. Critics called it a career-best performance, praising his vulnerability and depth. Then came A Star is Born, 2018, where he played Bobby, the brother and emotional anchor to Bradley Cooper's troubled musician. The role earned Elliot his first Academy Award nomination, long overdue recognition for decades of authenticity. What's striking about Elliot's career is how he's thrived without ever betraying himself. He's never reinvented his image, never jumped genres for attention, never played to trends. Instead, he let the world catch up to him. When everyone else was chasing youth and reinvention, Elliot doubled down on being real. That quiet consistency became his signature. Even in his voice work, from beef commercials to animated films like The Good Dinosaur, his sound carries a weight that no other actor can replicate. That low, smoky baritone has come to represent trust, strength, and timelessness. It's no wonder brands have paid millions just to borrow it for a few seconds. Behind all that success, though, is humility. Elliot's never seen himself as a star. "I'm just a working actor," he once said. "You do the job, you do it right, then you move on." That simple philosophy kept him grounded, even as Hollywood finally caught up to his worth. What makes Elliot's legacy unique isn't just the number of films, it's the type of films. He's one of the few actors whose body of work feels like a cohesive statement about life, loyalty, and masculinity. Every role fits together like pieces of the same puzzle, different faces of the same man, all shaped by discipline, quiet strength, and moral backbone. In an era obsessed with reinvention, Sam Elliott never needed to reinvent himself. He is the brand, rugged, steady, and real. The kind of actor whose presence reminds you that not all heroes wear capes. Some just wear dusty boots and let silence do the talking. Behind that quiet fame and movie star mystique is a man who values something rarer than fame or fortune: loyalty, love, and a life lived simply. Let's step away from the spotlight and see who Sam Elliott really is when the cameras stop rolling. The Private Sam. When you strip away the cinematic dust, the deep-voiced narration, and the cowboy persona, you find that Sam Elliott's real story isn't about fame, it's about faithfulness. Faithfulness to his values, his craft, and especially his family. In a world where Hollywood relationships collapse faster than movie deals, Sam Elliott has quietly built something unshakable. He's been married to actress Catherine Ross since 1984, a rare achievement in the entertainment industry, where most marriages barely outlast press tours. Their love story began on the set of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, though Elliott, then a nobody with a few lines,
Were gentlemen. I mean, they weren't assholes.
didn't dare approach her. It wasn't until years later, on the horror film The Legacy, 1978, that fate finally threw them together. Ross was already an established star, but Elliot didn't chase status. He pursued connection. And that's been their rhythm ever since. Their relationship has outlasted trends, tabloids, and time itself. Elliot often calls Ross the love of my life, not in some red carpet rehearsed tone, but in the quiet conviction of a man who means it. They've weathered the ups and downs of Hollywood by living far from it, tucked away on a ranch in Malibu, where horses outnumber humans. "We don't live the Hollywood life," Elliot once said. "We live our life." That life is marked by simplicity and discipline. Elliot wakes early, works hard, and stays grounded. He's never been drawn to luxury or spectacle. Even after earning millions, he still prefers doing yard work and fixing things himself. He's the kind of guy who would rather mend a fence than attend an awards party. That work ethic, learned from his father, a construction worker who once told him acting was a tough way to make a living, never left him. When his father died young, Elliot carried those words like a compass. His values aren't loud, but they're firm. Loyalty matters to him not just in love, but in friendship and creative collaboration. He's known for working with the same directors and co-stars over the years, showing the kind of consistency that's vanishingly rare in modern Hollywood. You won't find stories of him feuding with co-stars or disrespecting crew members. Everyone who's worked with him says the same thing. Sam shows up prepared, professional, and kind. That moral steadiness extends beyond set life. Elliot has always been protective of his image, not because of ego, but because he believes in representing something solid. He's spoken openly about his discomfort with the Hollywood obsession over celebrity culture and social media exposure. "I'm not interested in being famous," he said in one interview. "I'm interested in doing good work." Even when controversy brushed against him, like his blunt comments about certain films, he eventually did what few stars have the humility to do: reflect, learn, and own his words. That humility makes him human. He's not interested in being perfect, only honest. Elliot's private life also reflects his love for the land and the quiet dignity of the West. He's an environmentalist at heart, deeply connected to nature and to preserving open spaces. That's why he and Ross live with minimal flash. Their property is less a mansion and more a retreat, surrounded by oak trees and silence. It's where Elliot rides his horses, chops his own firewood, and reminds himself what really matters. He's also a devoted father to his daughter, Cleo Rose Elliott, a musician. Their relationship hasn't always been easy. Like any family, they've had their struggles, but Elliot's role as a father remains one of his proudest. His protectiveness is quiet, but fierce. The same kind of loyalty he brings to every relationship in his life. If there's a secret to Elliot's longevity, it's not in his film choices or his image. It's in his refusal to compromise who he is. He's turned down countless roles that didn't feel right, preferring integrity over attention. In an era where stars reinvent themselves to stay relevant, Sam Elliott stayed still, and that stillness became his strength. He said before that acting isn't about fame or fortune. It's about honoring the work. That belief, simple yet rare, has shaped not only his career, but his character. He's a reminder that the most powerful legacy isn't built in front of cameras. It's built quietly, through choices made off-screen. The man Hollywood couldn't change stayed true to himself. Maybe that's why Sam Elliott never truly hated anyone, just what fame tried to make of them. Subscribe for more Hollywood stories on legends like Elliot.